Welcome to Real Wisdom, where we dive into the real stories of remarkable women. Today, I'm excited to sit down with Lurleen Ladd, a singer-songwriter who's become a role model for female musicians over 40. From navigating the highs and lows of corporate America to finding her true calling in music later in life, Lurleen's dedicated herself to creating opportunities and fostering connections for women in music. And if you're curious to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Welcome, Lurleen. I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Glad to be here.
I really love your story. When I first learned about you, I knew that you were someone that I had to reach out to because I just thought it's very interesting because you started your career out in the corporate world. You've led nonprofits, and
I
then
have.
you hopped on the music scene after turning 40. Can you
Right.
share with us what was going through your mind when all that was happening?
A lot of change was going through my mind. I think it's good to sort of start how I even arrived at that sort of corporate place. My career actually started in social work. That was how I started when I first got out of college, and I loved that work that I was doing. And then had times in family stuff required we had to leave the state of Texas, which was where I was from, and I moved into administration and healthcare work from there. Which was an excellent background. When we got to Austin, my husband opened his practice, and I certainly was primed to step into the role as the person that ran that office. But I really felt like there was a line there, and I really wanted to go in a different direction. I did not know which way. I just felt like I didn't want to step into that role, and I was ready for something else. Literally, I think there was a moment when I was contemplating all this, and I felt like I had to make a big step in another direction, and it was a little bit scary. And it was as simple as trying to find a good voice coach in Austin. And there was just this sense of it's this way. I don't know if this is the right thing, but going by feel, this feels like a good idea. So when I started working with that vocal coach, I was there just to improve my singing voice. That's really what I thought I was doing. But I guess as divine timing or whatever, in the middle of those lessons, all of a sudden I literally woke up and started writing music. So that may sound, I don't know, far fetched, but I was a child like many kids that somebody said, go get those piano lessons. You got to take those, probably my mom or something. And so while I had done that as a kid, it really didn't translate into something that I was doing on a regular basis. But I guess when I say I started writing music, I think some of that stuff's just living in our minds. Every one of us is a student of music because we turn on the radio or listen to Spotify. And so in some ways, it's in the air we breathe. So I don't think it sounds so crazy for me to be like, but there was melody and lyrics, all these things showing up. I was as surprised as anybody would have been. I didn't know that's what I was going to be doing at all. That quickly, and this is where my somewhat driven personality showed up. So I started writing these songs. I wrote three, and then I said, I must now go to Nashville. Yeah. If that sounds naive, that would be an understatement. But I did. I took my three little songs and I went to Nashville. It's a songwriting conference, of course, wouldn't surprise you to have something like that in Nashville. And I was thrown into this class, and they asked us to bring a CD with the songs on it as they are written and sung. And then they wanted us to bring something that was just tracks. So essentially karaoke for yourself, right? I had never performed in front of anyone. Just getting those songs recorded was Herculean because I was so nervous. So when I got to Nashville, they were like, oh no, going on stage and you're going to sing those songs. And that's
Oh,
it.
no way.
And I said, no, I can remember saying no. They were like, no, this is it. And they took me to this crowded bar, and I waited my turn and I thought I was going to die. As a person who worked in the corporate world, worked for big companies like Interim Healthcare and had to stand up and talk in front of people, no problem. But singing is different. And it was literally not a body experience in that bar in Nashville. Without doubt, I can close my eyes and I can see those lights and those people. And the person who was in charge of us, our little group that night after I sang the first song, he called out from the darkness. He said, you didn't suck. Do another one. And so I was like, okay. Like, all right, I can do that. So it was actually the trip to Nashville was quite helpful. I met with some publishers, and they were very much coming at this from the writing side, and they gave me very good encouragement. As a matter of fact, one of them called me up and said, we love those songs. Do you have others? And I immediately said, Oh, yes, I do. Loads of them. Libraries of songs. Anyway, again, me rushing, me always being slightly over my skis. Anyway, but that was how it began. I didn't see it coming, but it took off like a shot, not so much from a success and all of that, but just so much that I found that I was excited to be doing it. It just all of a sudden seemed like there were lots of songs that were just waiting for me to pay attention and write them down. And so I went into the studio and started to record, and that's the shift that happened. And I didn't jump full force and said to people, "Hey, I'm a musician now." I was very uncomfortable with that. I was like, "Well, I've come to this late and I'm not as good as these other people." And so I just kept it on the down low, which is hilarious. But that was something I felt like I had to do at the time. I certainly took it seriously, but there was something about maybe I thought other people wouldn't. So I hedged. I hedged for a while.
Oh,
I-
that's interesting though, because I feel like when you accomplish something like that, you want to tell everybody. You're like, look at me, look what I did.
right.
But I guess that's true. There's also that fear of maybe being judged. Like, come on, really, you're going to start doing this now?
And then somebody even said to me, like, when has this ever happened? When has anybody ever done anything? And so you can start rattling off. There are, we don't always talk about Grandma Moses, but okay, she didn't start painting till whatever that is. But there are more stories than that. And I hope that we continue to find more stories like that. But yes, it was a little out of the norm. And our group of friends didn't include musicians. Our group of friends were business type people. And so
Right.
that also probably led to me feeling a little isolated. And you need context. And I didn't run out and create context. And that was short-sighted on my part to be around people that are going through it, even if it's at a different level than you are, a different range of experience. I think would have gotten me a little closer, a little faster to being like, no, I do this. I guess I was afraid too that people were like, oh, I'm a musician, I'm a singer-songwriter, and tomorrow I'm going to be an astronaut and then a ballerina. Like I can hear it. But it's funnily enough, those were stories. I was making that up. That was all those words were coming from inside. Not many people came up to me and were like, oh, you think you can do that? Most often, I think people were like, that's really cool. And what, of course, I didn't realize was a lot of people were in their minds going, I wish I could do that. I'm so afraid I could never. Now that I heard people say, I could just never do that. I could just never do that. And I understood why they said that. We always talk about, right? Like public speaking terrifies people. That's one of the most common fears, right? So that sort of thing of being seen, the challenge when you have to be seen and you're in your professional mode, you've got your suit on and you're standing up and talking to people. There's all these things that we have, especially at 40 and beyond, we've developed competencies. We know how to get up and do stuff like that. I didn't have a list of tools that I thought would see me through when I got on stage. And so I was wobbly. And it's funny because people who saw me early on when I performed, they didn't see any of that. And they often told me, why are you so nervous? You don't look nervous up there. And I'm like, oh, no,
If only you knew, right?
if only you knew there was this thing and there was something about being seen. And that was the hurdle because in my mind, I was okay to be seen up there on stage, but only if I was perfect, only if I didn't make any mistakes. And you can, even just saying the words out loud, you can hear the catch-22, right? You have to learn. I mean, I say this quote all the time because it's near and dear to me from Bill Withers, an amazing musician who said, nobody gets to wonderful without passing through all right. And the burden of the passing through to wonderful, to be okay with being all right, that was really hard for me to do so in front of people, because then it meant, you see me up here. I'm not as perfect as I wish I was, but I'm still here anyway. And
You're showing up. The first time that you got up on the stage, when it was done, did you think to yourself, I want this feeling again? Did it feed something in you?
It did. And as time went on, I got to this place where I was like, it was like more of me, true me was showing up when I was on stage. I didn't quite get it right away, but I certainly couldn't stop. I came back and was doing more and still struggling with a lot of those performance issues. And truly, there were many times when I stopped and I said, this is voluntary. This is hard, but this is totally voluntary. There is no one who says you have to do this. And so the answer to your question is in that response I had, which was, this is so hard, yet I can't seem to stop doing it. So something was being fed. And then this sense of calm eventually developed when I'm on stage. And I'm less, maybe I got to a place of being a little less concerned about what people thought. And it was just a very much of something that was a hangover. You could almost feel like I was trapped at about 14 or 15. What do people think? What are they going to say? What if they don't like me? Really, these are ideas that they sound young because I think they are young. And that's where the work was for me, to find a way to quiet some of that, make friends with some of that internal chatter. And it's really about self-acceptance, and any method, any point in your life, whether you're a potter or an accountant, or those lessons wait for you, the right circumstances for you to get to that, work that through. And so for me, it was music. And I worked with a vocal coach years back when I was first starting. I just said, this is too hard. I was trying to working it through in my mind. And she said, Lurleen, it's too late. It's over. And I didn't know what she meant, but she clarified quickly. She said, this path is already chosen for you. So this part where you're trying to weigh it all out and make some big decision, it's over. So this is the path, and you're going to work through whatever this is. This is where you're going to do it. And I've come back to that conversation many times. It's been very instructive, because at least the struggle could end. Like I didn't have to sit there and go, I wonder. It's like, oh no, this is it. I should dig in and find a way to be more comfortable with myself. And I'd like to think that's an easier battle after 40. Other challenges arise, but at least you have some experience in different circumstances.
I'm sure that when she first said that, you're thinking, oh my God, I didn't even start yet.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And it's all over. I was like, no. But I will say, again, we talked about context of the right people. It's so important. And part of what I did is eventually got to an excellent voice coach and there were times in there that I would have fits and starts. I would go and play out, but I was constantly writing. That never changed. Writing was really where I felt at ease, mostly because I think, as people know about writing, much of that is always rewriting, right? It's always about revision. And I loved that chance to come back in and hone something, get a little bit better. And I was learning myself myself as a writer and a vocalist, all of those, the interplay of all of that. So that was steady. But when I eventually got to this voice coach, who took a different approach to vocal instruction, she was really about unleashing the voice and contending with those psychological issues that kind of put a lid on it. And she really said to me, you need to do a performance class that she offered. And she said it would give you a chance to low stakes, get up and sing in front of people, and a little bit instructive. And I knew she was right. The minute she said I needed to do that, I don't doubt that she was absolutely right, but I just wouldn't do it. And she would tell me, okay, it's next Tuesday. And I'm like, I am there. I am so there. And then I would cancel at the last second. So that stuff was still running. And so I never went. And for probably a year or two, I begged off or just said whatever, get out of it. And then finally she said, I really think this would help you. And I guess, again, timing, I was ready to hear it. And so I said, tell you what, I'm going to host it. And so it was at my house. And as I like to say, sometimes if you do that, you can't outrun yourself. And so the class was held at my house, and I did discover that she was quite right, because that class was a way there would be an accompanist, and you would do 2 or 3 songs, and you'd get up there and sing your song. And if you made a mistake, oh no, the world didn't stop spinning. They gave a little bit of feedback, and then you just went through this, and over an hour's time, you would do all 3 of your songs. And it was super helpful. And what I realized, a lot of this came down to the nervous system calming down. And when it's revved up like this, and you're trying to sing, or really public speaking, or whatever it is, if you're not seated in yourself and feel like your nervous system is not overly activated, then you're a better chance to do whatever it is you want to do, whether it's singing or speaking or any of that. And I always like to say, when you're singing, trying to hold your breath and do that is ill-advised. So breathing, the basic functions. I actually was just talking to somebody who was a piano teacher, and she worked with classically trained students. And she said, I have to remind my students as they're playing, these are people who are not singing, they're just playing piano, to breathe. She said they are often holding their breath. And she said, part of the beauty of the music as they're playing is actually breath moving through their body as they play the different figures in a song, right? Like little sections and things. Just like when we talk and we take a breath and we rest, right? That's the beauty of the music as she was explaining it. And I knew that, and I probably had heard that, but I love the way she said that without the breath, the music lacked passion. And so it's the spaces in between, the spaces in between the words. And that's about, again, in order to give something space, you have to be able to relax. And so all of that, those are all those kind of similar lessons about regulating that nervous system. Space is good. Space in between things is good. Pacing, all of that. And I was a person who is always rushing through from one thing to the next thing. And so the lesson to me has been about pacing. And
because I always feel that I need to fill that space. Like awkward silence, you're like, oh, it's not a good place to be.
put something in there. Yes. No,
But it actually is. Like if you could just let the moment just be there and
Right.
experience it, sometimes it's magical.
Truly. The other thing people might not know is that when you're standing on stage and singing, people, when they're listening to you, they look just like you're looking at me right now, which is calm. They might not even be smiling. They're taking it in. So I would be up there giving it my all, and I'm looking at these people's faces and I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like when people are listening intently to you. They aren't necessarily like, doing all, I mean, sure, they might, but generally that's what that looks like. People listening, taking something in, they're at rest. Their faces are at rest. So that was another thing that I would not have known unless you're up on stage singing. You don't know what the reverse of that looks like. And so it's funny when I'm at concerts now and there's somebody singing, I'm smiling. I'm like, I'm going to give you a little something back because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be doing that anyway.
I was always curious about that for the artist when you're on stage, if you actually see the audience or if you just
It depends on the lighting. I did a big Christmas show and it was very much it was a big ballroom, but I could see people's faces because they were quite close to me. We were jammed in there. And no, I can see them. And that there is that trick. What do they say is to look at someone's forehead, right? If you're nervous, look over. And I think that's a perfectly great response because you aren't singing at one person. I guess I could, but that would be weird. So there is a little bit of an overview in a big room like that. So there are some tricks there for sure.
Okay. I want to know more, definitely want to
Sure.
know more about you, but I would love to just play a little game of this or that so that we could get to know different things about
Sure,
you.
absolutely.
Okay. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Absolutely an early bird. I'm up at 5, so
Up at 5. Okay.
I'm not like running around, but I'm awake, and I am absolutely. Those are my sharpest hours of the day or the morning.
Do you set an alarm, or is it just
No.
that's your natural time?
That's my natural time. My body just starts about then. Mm-hmm.
Okay, homemade cooking or gourmet dining?
Gosh, it's funny. I wish I was cooking more. I have these conversations all the time with friends about that. We all wish that we were cooking more, but I do enjoy a good meal out. So for right now, where I am, and the fact that I'm living in a rent house in Austin right now because we're renovating. I have an excuse, but that's about to end. I'm about to have a great kitchen, so I should be cooking more.
Yeah, well, take advantage of it right now. I won't tell anybody.
Okay.
Okay, classic music or today's hits?
For me right now, it's classic. For just right now, I'm doing some research on my next album that I'm working on, and I'm actually studying with quite intently. I'm studying Annie Lennox vocal style and production. So for at this moment, I'm kind of back in a couple of her albums from the 90s.
She does have a beautiful voice. Like it's something.
Incredible. And I learned so much. At first, because I'm a writer of my own music, original music, I was sort of like, covers and the like. I didn't really want to go down that path because I'm writing my own music, but there is so much to be gleaned and learned from other people. And I've done a deep dive like that. I did a huge deep dive on Patsy Cline and did a review and kind of learned, 18 of her songs. And it's as just I did that as more of a lesson to myself. I just wanted to see if I could mimic her and what I could learn. And that's those things are instrumental, whether they lead to something or not. I think that it's really a smart move to do, even if you're a person who is a writer or creator in your own right of original material. I think you go back and look at the icons, and there's so much to be learned in a way that is you can do it on your own. And
Oh,
that's where I'm at right
absolutely.
now. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this one should resonate with you because you're living between two places. City lights or starry nights?
I will say I'm a city lights gal. I grew up in Houston, and Austin is our obviously is home for us, but we have a house in Colorado, so I do appreciate the beauty here in Colorado.
Mhm.
But where we are, my neighbors routinely tell me that there are bears and mountain lions up here. To which I say, "City girl, just reminding you guys, city girl, please don't tell me." And then somebody's, "Let me show you the video of the mountain lion that was just right out in front of your front door at 5 a.m." And
Oh, fabulous.
yeah, like that to me, I have a little bit of trouble with that. But yeah, city
Okay.
gal.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I would agree with you there. I'm not a big fan of wildlife up close and personal like that.
Me either. Me either. I'm not. And people are like, "Hey, let's go camping." I'm like, no, not so much me. No.
I'm good. Okay, just one more. Comfy sneakers or cowboy boots?
Mm. I guess comfy sneakers. Although I do have cowboy boots, I will say. But yeah, comfy sneakers, I think. Just
Oh,
comfy.
stylish. Yes.
I think that combination is available.
Okay. Do you feel that you've taken some pretty big risks in pursuing your passion for music? And if you have, could you tell us about one?
See risks. So when I a year or two back, I released my second album. And when I did that, I was really starting to feel like I was coming into my own. And so when I was ready to do that release, I wanted to do something special. And I wanted to connect with women who might be just like me and had experiences similar. And so I wrote an article that was published in Medium, and it was published on another site for an online publication and group called Next Tribe. And in that, I explained a little bit of what we've talked about. But in there, I really said what it was like, where music was for me, and how I grew up with a challenging childhood. I had a father who was abusive, and I was an overweight kid, which is a tough thing, and that I drugged forward. And again, we talked a little bit before about what it meant to be, why being seen was so hard, right? So all that stuff. What makes me hopefully a good singer-songwriter are those experiences and my ability to interpret them. But it is the burden of some of those experiences where the sort of some of that old grief and stuff is stuck. So in that article, I wrote a lot. I really bared my soul about what it was like growing up and becoming the person and the woman that I am, and the challenges that I dealt with around stage fright and how unworthy I felt a lot of the time. That article came out, and I did have to reach out to my mom and my siblings and say, "Hey, I just got to let you know a very personal thing is out about me on the internet that I wrote." And I'm okay with that, but I did feel like, oh no, I was pretty vulnerable in that, and I did feel like I needed to say something to my family about it. But I mean, as far as my husband and kids go, they've been behind me 110%, but I did feel like I needed to call it out to my mother. That article was a bit of a risk. And then when it went out, I basically said to all the women and anybody that was interested, if you're like me and want to be a part of what I'm doing, please submit a video, and we're going to choose somebody to come to Austin. And when I do the release, you would be on stage with me. That was a significant risk to me, to be so open. I am it's sort of interesting. You can be a person who steps up on stage and still be a private person. And I am that type of person. I'm happy to be forthright and to be up there singing, but I'm not necessarily like, "Hey, let me tell you all about myself and deepest, darkest things about myself." So that was uncomfortable. But I also felt if I wanted women to connect with me at that level, at that real feeling level, then I needed to show up in that space first. So that was a bit of certainly it was a big risk for me. And then all the stories that came from the submissions, the videos that were submitted, I was blown away by those women being equally vulnerable with me, and seeing, for so many of them, music was the thing that held them together through very difficult times, challenges, divorces, illnesses, deaths, all this stuff that we all know happens in life. But the thing that held them, made them feel whole, enabled them to face the next day was because they were writing and performing music. And so that really resonated with me. And obviously, we found went two winners. They were all incredible, but and flew two women to Austin, and they were there with me in Austin when I released that second album. And really, and as I said on stage at that night, I said, okay, all you guys all know me. And I've always been this businesswoman that did a lot of other things. I ran businesses. I started businesses, started nonprofits. And I said to them that night, I said, I've always said I do this stuff. Oh, and I do this music thing on the side. And I said, today marks the day when I don't do that anymore. When people ask me, what do you do? I say that I'm a singer-songwriter. Yes, I have some excellent business and management skills, but that's not who I am. I am this artist, this creative. And so for me, for someone that may not sound like a big risk, but at the time for me to say that and step into that truth and own it and be like, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to love everything I do, but that it's not about your opinion. It's about me. And so
So that was a while. It took you a while to get.
it took me a while to do that. And the reason for a lot of that is life kept running on. Even though I started writing music, there was businesses to run, children to raise. And so trying to find and establish a rhythm with that I could live with, that took, I'm not joking around when I say that's decades of work.
Yeah. No, seriously.
Yeah, but I don't, yeah, it really has been. I love where I am with it today. I love the idea of continuing to write and to create music and to also connect with women. I mean, that really is, I wouldn't say one overtakes the other. Music is central in that way, but me finding my tribe around music is a big overarching goal. That way I can receive, because I think I'm really in the right place now to receive, and I can give. So that's where I'm at with it right now.
Can you give me a little bit more about that? What do you mean by you feel you're in the right place to receive?
So I can receive, I think that all the benefits of community that come from having other artists in my life as context. I mentioned that first. I don't think early on I was able to, I was in a position to receive that in a big way. I was so self-focused and I have to refine these skills that I didn't realize how equalizing and liberating it would have been to have been in a circle of other female musicians. And there's something that's endemic to that as a problem. So in my work, obviously I formed an organization that supports women in music. It's called Wave Makers. It's all about women 40 plus. And in forming that organization, as I would sit and talk to other women in music, the thing that always jumped out was everybody was incredibly isolated. I was like, because I took my own experience of being like, I'm just over here and I do other stuff and I don't know a lot of other musicians other than the people that I work with. And I'm isolated, but I thought that was a me problem, like a me thing. And then I sit and talk to all these women. They're all that way. At least I'm explaining to you what it's like in Austin. And when I sat amongst all these women, they all, the overarching theme is I go this alone. I'm by myself. I don't know the roadmap of what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's a bigger problem. That's not just something I created, but I do believe the antidote to that is to build this group of musicians and women like yourself to fill in. And so when I say I'm ready to receive, I'm now grounded enough, and this is not about comparing yourself to somebody who's better or worse. I don't mean that. I just mean I'm now ready to have that community. And it's silly because it sure would have helped. It would have helped so much before, but I couldn't see that. Now I'm like, yeah, I am in a position to receive. And also I feel now I'm also in a position to give. I have a decade or more of that of experience that I can offer. I do think the business experience is valid. It doesn't go away. And so I think people sometimes ask you, what's your superpower? I think my superpower is the ability to be creative, but also very business minded. And I can jump back and forth between the two. And for female musicians, every single one of them is a businesswoman. And I don't think they often get the credit they deserve. It takes a tremendous amount of hustle. And they have to, by sheer demand, they have to be able to jump back and forth. If they're going to be a working musician, it just takes a lot of organizational skills. And so when I'm talking to other women like myself, it often comes down to the nuts and bolts of how do I do this and how do I make this work? And I've got kids at home and I have it's logistics. It's just a whole lot of logistics that you have to be able to move in and out of and still hold on to your creative self. You cannot sacrifice one for the other. So that's often the conundrum. And I hope that's where I hope when I say I can give, I hope I can give fellowship to these other women
Yes.
in your community. But also there's a little bit of business coaching that happens in there too. And I enjoy that. I like that.
Yeah, it's valuable too. But you know what I find really interesting because you're trying to develop a community of women in music, right?
Right.
That are a little bit older and not, typically what you see entering the music scene,
Right.
and they feel isolating. And I find it very interesting that I'm working with a group of women. I started a community for women in menopause in 2009, and that has nothing to do with music, but it has the whole idea of community, and it is the feeling of isolation that it's a recurring theme. And so I just find it fascinating that you're bringing that up, and it's an entirely different community of women, but they still feel that same feeling.
Yeah, that's why I think it it's not necessarily industry driven. There's something that's happening in that age range. This very dark statistic that one of the biggest spikes in women, the incidence of suicide, is this 40 to 60 range. And I was just reading about that statistic. And of course, no mention in the article because it was purely medical at that. Nobody mentioned, I wonder what happens between 40 and 60. I can only hazard a guess. I don't mean to attribute isolation entirely to menopause, but I do think there's a massive transition that happens on a, at a career level, biochemical level. And when you feel like you're sort of kind of caught in overwhelm and you're struggling just day to day to sort of keep up, isolation is a very reasonable response, right? Pull in and self-protect and just do what you can do in front of yourself, what's in front of you. I don't think it's an accident. It's a good thing that there's people like you and others there's this sense of like, we have to reach out and connect with each other because this is hard and it doesn't, and going alone is not the answer. Don't go it
No, it
alone.
isn't. But you're right. I think that's always our first instinct, and it is mine too. Whenever I'm feeling like, oh, there's a lot coming at me, you pull back as
Right.
opposed to, hey, is there anybody else out there that's feeling the way I'm feeling?
And I hope that's some of the shift that is taking place now is that women start to understand that the connection it's everything. And some of it's easier now, of course, because we have social media. We can do all this stuff and be connected without physically being in each other's presence. But I talked. I did an industry panel for women in music, and I talked about this idea. It's a sociological concept called third place. Right, first place is home and family. Second place is work. Third place is a place where we find commonality and we're reflected back in these spaces. And for many folks, this was, of course, was church. And if that is your thing, and you get your community that way, go for that. But if you don't have something that third place, I think it is incumbent upon us to create it. And I do think it's going to be like-minded women that do it. And while I think the internet serves us in that regard, I do think there is something about a face-to-face conversation with people in your community, women in your community that you can see and meet with in person that can really be an antidote to some of that isolation. But I do think if you passively think it's going to show up,
No.
if you have enough awareness to realize that it's missing, then you have a responsibility to go out there, make something happen. And meaning go attend that meeting, drag a friend along, that doesn't look like you. I really do think that there is something about that too, that we often get a variety of experience because we surround ourselves with people that have their backgrounds are the same, our life experiences are the same. I do think at the next party, at the next get together, find somebody who doesn't look exactly like you, get them into a conversation, person to person. That's really how to enrich your life, Anyway,
Oh,
my pulpit.
I really like that idea because I think that is part of this time between your 40s and your 60s where you get stuck in that space where it's the same thing. And maybe that's how you cope with life, or you know that you can count on this and this, but introducing, a new person or a new music, a new something
Right.
can be a big deal.
I think you do have to seek out the different experiences,
Yes.
right?
You have to seek them out. I
Right.
think when we were younger, opportunity and experience just is always coming at you because when you're in school, or you're more able to travel or do different things. But as you settle into life, sometimes you do have to make it for yourself. You're right.
And it's small. Just make the agreement with yourself. You're just going to try it. And I tell people I'm a singer songwriter, and often the first thing they tell me is my voice is terrible. I get this all the time. I could never do that. And I'm still refining my answer because it always really bothers me when people are like, my voice is terrible. And I think, okay, they're just like any muscle. If you wanted to be a golfer, and I really would be, I'm a terrible golfer, but I realize that if I really wanted to do that, there are people who can help me get better at that. But when people say that to me, they wish they could do that, I'm always like, you can learn. And if you're a person that you're a woman watching this podcast and you're like, I really think I would like to sing, or I think my voice is pretty good, but it could be better. And you want to get better at that. And that's a new experience you want to seek for yourself. There's help for all of that. There's lots of people who have, sort of tricks and tools and things. There's ways to learn. I get really disappointed when I hear people our age and older, or any age, that go, I can't do that. You can't do it because you don't know how. So where was it somehow written that we're just all supposed to stop learning? People have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I talk about that. Like you have to build some resilience around being new at something. And a lot of us by 40 have already done all of our learning. We went to college and we learned how to we even figured out some of us had to be mothers when we didn't know the first end of that. And we figured that. And so now we're supposed to coast along and just in our expert era where we don't have to learn incorporate a lot of new skills. But I tell you, once you really connect with your children, if that's a big primary focus in your life, watch them let you be a student at something. Allow them to observe you learning something and not being an expert, not having all the answers. Those are really good experiences to chase down in life. You'll learn a lot about yourself. For sure, but you won't die of at being a newbie.
No, I am learning a lot about myself lately about using technology, and I think yesterday I was on the verge of a breakdown, but I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. It's the last thing I do.
It's funny. I think when you're sitting there in that moment, I think it's a fun little trick in your mind to go, by the time I've done this exact thing 10 more times, this will just be such a funny memory. I already see it. Like when you've totally mastered it, you'll look back on this day and it will be like, wasn't that funny that I couldn't figure out how to plug that thing or whatever it is? But like, I do think you have to envision yourself on the other side of the hill.
Yesterday, my husband was walking into the room where I was trying to figure out this little bit of technology, and he saw the look on my face, and I could see him just turn around and go right out.
The store I'm not even
going
I'm
there.
Go the other way.
There is something, though, that I did want to ask, and it just seems that the music industry is so focused on young emerging artists. How do you encourage women who want to get into this space at a later point in life to look past that?
When it comes to these ideas, and we're talking about ageism, of course, and I think for women, it's off the rails when they tell you in the music industry, if you haven't reached your pinnacle of whatever it is by the time you're like 19 or 20, it's over. So first thing I say is that just sounds nuts, right? So like you yourself just hearing it go, I know that's bullshit. So I mean, you have to just call it what it is, that it's an operating system that undermines creativity and growth in people. So right away, we're going to just have to go, because by the time I'm talking to them, my gosh, if I'm talking to you and you're 25, it would be a case closed. So we're going to suspend all that for starters. And then I say, we're bombarded constantly with all these ideas out there about how we're supposed to look. And you could chase that all day long and still never be whatever that thing is, because this ideal is constantly moving. So many times I will say, you can't stop it cold, and for me, I go, literally, I see it as a dial that's floating in the air. I turn the volume down, right? I can't stop it, but I can at least turn it down. And I think that strategies like that are helpful. The main thing is when they're trying to decide if they're going to pursue this more, I do really ask them, do you know that this makes you happy? And their answer is always yes. They know. This isn't, there's no fog or haze. They're like, when I'm singing, I'm so happy. If I could do nothing more, I would do this all day long. I'm like, that seems like a really clear message. So I'm on that team with you. If you know that this makes you happy, if you ignore that, it is at your own detriment. And I say, you don't get this time back that where you are today. If you wait 10 years, they don't come in and give you a rebate and go, oh, okay, now you can go back and do it. I really want them to honor that voice that tells them, gosh, this makes me happy. Gosh, I feel so good when I do this. It doesn't mean that there's not hard parts. It doesn't mean there's not parts that make you're not afraid, but you have to listen. You have to listen to that voice inside of you. And I just think if you know it makes you happy, you could spend your time doing, you're going to spend your time doing something.
Yes. Right.
Right. Because the time's going to pass. So you're going to do something. Why not the thing that makes you happy? Why not the thing that gives you joy? And I think some women are like, oh, it's so selfish of me to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Other people need me to do other things. And that sort of martyr self-sacrifice, I'm going to come
why?
right
Because
back.
other people will figure it out. Trust me.
They will figure it out. And so that's why I said that bit about let your children see you be a beginner. Let your children see you be a student. Sometimes that's the way in because they can't quite figure it out that they can take up time, space, and resources for themselves.
Yeah.
If they're struggling there, then I tell them if the thing that really resonates is your children, and of course our kids do, but a way for that child to become a better person is to see their parent struggle. I mean that. You know what I mean when I say struggle? Is they see a parent pursue a passion. They see a parent honor what makes them happy. And that is an invaluable lesson. I hope that my children understand that they watch their mother take risks, pursue her art, and they saw that it wasn't always easy and that I was nervous and, and insecure. They saw a parent who got through that and there's value.
Yeah. And they saw your successes.
Exactly. My son was at the Christmas concert. There's always schlepping. Let me tell you, if you're a musician of any sort, there's schlepping. And so he was helping set things up and take things down that evening. And we'd already been broken down for 45 minutes or so, getting ready to leave. And he goes, hey, Mom, he's 22. And he goes, that was just a really great concert. He was just wanted to take me aside and tell me what a great job I did. And
that's so sweet.
But he already, I think somewhere along in the night, he'd already been like, oh, it was great. He was like, no, I really wanted to tell you that was just really good. So, I love that he was there and that he had nice words to say, but in a way they've been with me all along. And I did ask them, I said, were you embarrassed? Were you ever embarrassed? Cause whatever.
Oh, sure.
I know what it's like to be a teenager. Were they ever like, oh my gosh, what is my mom doing up there? And they were like, no, it was normal. By that point, it was normal. So
I like that though.
I do too. I mean, I'm sure I embarrassed them in other ways.
Oh, I am sure. Like both of my boys have stories about a way that I've embarrassed them, but they will survive. Trust me.
Yes.
Okay. One more thing though, as you open the doors for other women and you're building this community, is there a story that stands out to you about maybe an experience you had or maybe an artist that you've met that made an impact on you?
Oh, well, I mean, the number of women that I've gotten a chance to talk to now that are success far beyond mine. I when I did the panel and there were 4 women up on stage, Sue Foley, Kathy Valentine, who was bassist for the Go-Go's, they were all sharing their industry experiences. And one of them started in music at about 13 or 14. I think Sue Foley did. She was quite young. And somebody asked, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is just starting? And she was like, it's a challenge, but if you're easily dissuaded, you will be dissuaded. You will give up, she was saying to them, because this is a hard road to go. And it sort of hit me that day that you have to have sort of a reservoir of strength to pursue, to have a creative pursuit. And I don't mean that you have armor that you put on, because I don't think in the creative process that's really great when you're writing. But there is sort of a, like, you have to have a little bit of toughness there. And I don't, and I would have said to you before I was in the world of music that I was like, oh, you need me to be tough? No problem. I got that. I got that. I just didn't know how to pick that same skill set up and apply it in my creative life. But you do need to have some of that. And yes, as artists and creatives, we have this tender side. Yeah, 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 yeah. But to be able to call that sort of inner reserve up and to push. One of the things I really truly feel at this stage of the game is, if anybody tells me I have to white knuckle my way through anything, I'm like, those days are over. Like, oh, push, like, you have to suffer through. I'm like, if that is all you've got, I can't go there with you. So I don't mean that. I don't mean you have to suffer in that way. You have to be willing to fight for yourself, advocate for yourself. That's the toughness I'm talking about. I don't mean for you to suffer in pain and shame and all. I don't mean that. I do mean that you're going to have to find a place within yourself that says, I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to fight for myself. And in that way, all of that joy that music gives you, or whatever the thing is in your life, what that's giving to you, you're going to have to fight for it at some point. And that means you stand up for yourself. You push when it would be easier to run away. You speak up when it would be easier to be silent, to show up authentically as yourself when maybe it would be easier to demur or to pretend it doesn't matter. That's what I mean. I do not mean, though, go run 10 miles and make your, and you have to get through that.
No, but
I hope.
don't give up on yourself, because you're right. You need to be able to have something to that reserve, that little whatever it is that says, you know what, I deserve this. I'm going to give it some time. I'm going to do my hardest to make room for it.
Truly, and it is about making room, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about building capacity, making room, resilience. These are all the things that carry us forward to, however old we're old enough to, lucky enough to the age that we get to be to. Yeah, I think it is about building capacity and giving some room and space for you to grow in whatever the endeavor is. And certainly when it comes to music, and I'm talking to these women, I say, if you know this is what makes you happy, then you're going to have to stand up for yourself. And maybe in some ways, at this very core level, sometimes women haven't done that yet. They've gone along, right? What do we talk about? We talk about agree and proceed. And if you've spent a lifetime doing that, that this would be a big shift, a big change. And I speak that as a woman who probably did a lot of that, was raised to do that. I don't, not maybe, but I don't know, maybe that sense of trying to be pleasing or palatable or whatever that thing is, that lie that we get told.
You didn't make waves. That's the way I always thought about it growing up. You just kind of want to keep everything right here. I didn't want to be the one kid in the family who got everybody all riled up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I was definitely a kid that followed rules. It was like, there was probably, I mean, those were good choices that I made. I was in a difficult situation as a kid. So I didn't want to be a person that rocked the boat because it was dangerous. But obviously it's not the circumstance I'm in now. And I'm much more comfortable rocking the boat now than I probably ever have been. And it's way past time anyway.
Well, we're getting to the end of our time together, but I want you to tell us, what do you have going on in your life right now that we should be looking forward to, or that you would like to share with us so we know where to find you next?
You can certainly find me online. There's plenty of my music that's out there. I'm excited about that. Excited that I'm working on my new album. So there will be music coming out from there. I'm working with a great group in Austin, which is Austin Woman Media. They do business awards every year, and I've been instrumental in those awards. But I asked last year as I was sitting there, and I said, we have awards for lawyers. And I go, why are there no awards for women in music and business? And she said, they were like, that's a good question. And I was like, you're going to have to add that. So this year we're announcing a new category that will launch, will be for 2025, but we're announcing this year, this May, that there will be an award for a Women's Way Business Award for women in music, which I think is huge. And I'm excited, although that award could be for any woman in music in the Austin area, I have a little carve out so that there's always a way to honor a woman 40 plus. So let's just say they chose an amazing woman, Jackie Vincent, who's an incredible musician in Austin, and she is 34. And so if she was next year's winner, I'm making certain that there is a second award and a carve out for a woman 40 plus. That's important to me. And for there to be a recognition that these women who are creatives and putting out amazing music, and you see them at your local bar, that they are indeed women in business. And so that to me is important. And as I mentioned, we split our time between Austin and Denver. And so I'm working on starting to play out in the Denver area. So if you happen to be in that area, you can look for me to be playing in that area. There's always a lot going on, but that's that, and Wavemakers expanding and connecting with more women. We're building out our directory so that if you're in a couple of the different markets that we're in right now, which is Austin, Denver, and we're working on Nashville, I believe, is for women who, if you're a 40 plus female musician in those areas, you can connect with Wavemakers online and get your name added to the directory. So all those
Fabulous. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. This was so much fun getting to know you and a little bit more about the music industry and just being okay to be creative at any age.
At any age, creativity at any age. If you're a woman out there and any of this seems to resonate with you and you're interested in pursuing music and you don't know how to start, you can certainly reach out to me. Thankfully, there are a number of organizations that are really active and getting more active for women in music, even those they're there for women beyond 40 plus, that starting to figure out how to put a roadmap together, to how to get from, I think I want to do this to, and then in 5 years, I want to be doing whatever that is, 5 albums out and I'm traveling around the country, that there are women that we can connect you with that can help provide answers, how to get started. You can talk to me and tell me how scared you are. And I'll be like, I totally get you. I understand. And I still want you to do it anyway. Thanks, Holly. Absolutely. Thanks, Holly. I really appreciate it. I love all the work that you're doing. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thank you for joining us on Real Wisdom. If you're inspired by stories like this and want to be part of a community that celebrates the wisdom of women, visit joinempart.com and become a part of our conversation. And don't forget to subscribe for even more real wisdom. Until next time, keep embracing your story.